Hello, good evening. Welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning. Welcome to camp, and welcome to another edition of Urban Talks. Actually, the third evening that is focused on Vltava Philharmonic Hall, new concert hall for Prague. We have a series of interviews and lectures with architects and members of architecture ateliers and studios that are joining, participating in the competition, the most followed and maybe most visible competition in Central Europe right now. And it's a very important step for Prague because we have a desperate lack of modern architecture in our city, and we are hoping for the best result. But we are not talking about the Philharmonic itself because it's in the middle of the competition. So we are talking about the public space, we are talking about the public buildings, the very wide range of topics, but not about the Philharmonic Hall. We will see 5 presentations. We have 5 speakers for this evening, and from the most famous studios in the world, from top leading architects. We will see Henning Larsen, SANAA, MVRDV, Barozzi Veiga, or Sou Fujimoto. We will start with 2 pre-recorded interviews because of time zones. So we will start with SANAA and the lecture of Kazuyo Sejima that is pre-recorded, and after that, after the 5 presentation, we will have time for question and answers. So you have a chance to ask questions in this session. If you will use slido.com, you have a chance to join our chat room. You will write a Campuy online as a password, and you will be able to ask us a question. I will ask our guests, and you will get your answer. So feel free to join our discussion. And now I will ask my colleagues to start the presentation of SANAA of Kazuyo Sejima.
Thank you very much for inviting us to join this competition in Prague. It is a beautiful city. We are very excited by this opportunity to reimagine the site and create a new architecture along the river. I'm very happy to speak to you today about some of our work, and I'm sorry I cannot be there in person. We have a different approach to each project, but 2 of our main design principles are, first, a connection between architecture and environment. Second, architecture that is like a park. At first, we explore the environment of each project, and we try to respond to it. I will now show some buildings we have designed that do this. Some of these projects are surrounded by nature, others are built in the city. We are very interested in architecture that becomes part of the scenery as one element within the whole landscape. This is Grace Farm in Connecticut, United States. Our design is a long curved roof that follows the existing topography and floats gently above the site. The atmosphere is always changing as you move up and down the soft hills. When you are above the roof, it looks like a river that reflects the sky. The shape creates a sequence of courtyards and outdoor spaces. The program includes a multi-purpose hall, community gathering space and library, as well as an aesthetic field and BBQ courtyard in the landscape, and a gymnasium sunken in the ground. This is our design for the Sydney Modern in Australia near the waterfront. It is a horizontal building at the scale of the park nearby. The site is complex. It is over the highway and old oil tanks. There are some important trees that help to determine the shape of the building. We created layers that follow the steps of the landscape, introducing many public routes through the site, both inside and outside. It is an architecture of terraces that blend into the surroundings. It is now under construction. This view is from the entrance foyer. You can see the landscape on each level through the continuous atrium. And here you can see how the exhibition space opens, new view toward the sea. This is our design for the Suzhou Shishan Square Art Theater and Museum in China. We tried to make a large canopy in the park. This canopy is a lobby for the two halls. The roof goes up and down softly. This creates a diverse range of spaces. At the heart of it is a main hall. Here you can see the canopy and the continuity between the external and internal space. We are also very interested in cities and their different layers. This is the new museum in the US. We designed a series of the stacked boxes that shift as you move between floors. In this way, we opened up the museum to interact with its surroundings, and the form echoed the pattern of building in New York. The facade is covered in metal mesh and was inspired by the industrial history of the area. Inside, each of the spaces has its own proportions and relationship to the city. This showed the entrance. We imagined that the street would extend to the lobby of the museum. This showed the terrace and how it opened to the city. And each facade has its own relationship to the city. This is our design for La Samaritaine 10, a mixed-use building that includes a department store, offices, social housing, and a hotel. This site is in the very center of Paris, surrounded by history. The new facade is a curved wheel of glass. The waves are defined by the rhythm of neighboring Osman windows. When you look down the street, you feel continuity. Our intention was to blur old and new to create a different landscape. The layers of the facade create deep reflection that changes according to sun patterns and time of day. This is our design for the Tsuruoka Concert Hall in Japan. We were inspired by the traditional roof architecture around the site, also by the mountains in the background. At the center is a large hall. It is surrounded by smaller spaces, each with its own room. This creates many different types of space, from the very small to the very big, from low ceilings and bright spaces at the edge, to very high ceiling and more intimate character of the main hall. It creates a stepped interior landscape. We have always been interested in the idea that architecture can be like a park. In a park, there are many people of different ages with different purposes. Each cluster enjoys spending time doing its own thing, but the park gives them a sense that they are not alone, they are also with others. There is a respect for diversity. In this way, I think the park is a miniature of the city, and we try to create this atmosphere in our buildings. We try to do this in three main ways. The first is by creating smooth and free circulation through the building. Wherever possible, we like to approach from all sides. This is our design for the 21st Century Museum of Contemporary Art in Kanazawa, Japan. It is a circular building with no front and back. People can pass through casually as they move across the neighborhood. The inside is a series of galleries and courtyards, each with its own character. It is like a village. Patio brings light deep into the building. and there is public circulation around the perimeter of the building. The building becomes part of the neighborhood. Another way we can create a feeling of a park is by making a one-room space. This is our design for the Rolex Learning Center in Switzerland. We freed up the ground floor by lifting the building and creating a new topography. Many layers feel smoothly connected. This model photo shows the interior organization. It is made of soft divisions that creates a park-like environment where diverse activities can happen side by side. The hill in the building separates one activity from another. You discover them as you move through the building. The shape of the building echoes the mountains beyond the lake. The second way we create an architecture that is like a park is by breaking the program into smaller parts. Each has its own structure, but they are gathered together as one to create a new landscape, whether big or small. This is the Bocconi urban campus where we use glass, gardens, and mesh to create depth. It is made of 9 curved forms, each with its own function and form. Through the middle is a public park, and each building has its own garden patio. Together, they create a new neighborhood feeling. The clusters blend together through the layers of glass and extend into gardens on all sides. Here you can see how they come together to form a park. At very different scale, this is my design for the Inujima Art House project on the island in Japan. Wherever possible, we kept the old houses and renovated them. This approach creates a dialogue between old and new. When the existing buildings were too damaged, we replaced them with small acrylic pavilions that becomes exhibition spaces. This is a beautiful garden we propose as one of the interventions. It is a place where the residents can meet and discuss the future of the island. The third way we create park-like architecture is by creating soft boundaries. This is our design for the glass pavilion in Toledo, where many layers of glass bring reflection and nature into the building. We built a big float roof to give the feeling of one space. Under this roof, we divided the spaces with glass walls that reflect the internal spaces and the surroundings. This is our design for the Louvre-Lens Museum in France. The site is in an old mining town. This shows the plan. At the center is the foyer. From here, you can access the gallery wings. The building sits at the center of the large public park. Function is the main hall are given their own glass partitions. They create soft boundaries in a one-room space. Inside the main gallery space, the artwork are freely distributed, creating a new landscape people can move through as they choose. As you move through the long 120-meter space, it becomes a journey through time. The softly reflective aluminum walls also help to dissolve the edge. The aluminum facade also reflects the colors of the sky, dissolving the building into the landscape. This is our design for the new National Gallery in Hungary. Our intention here is for the display of art to feel like an extension of the park, so the edge is a series of soft boundaries. As you move across it, you find many different activities. They open onto a series of platforms that create an open and vibrant space. Like a path, these routes and terraces lead you all the way to the top of the building and offer views out to the park. We are also keen to bring a specific environmental solution to each project. This is our project in Essen. It is close to an old mine, so we could use geothermal energy to heat the building. We developed a new system where the geothermal tubes are embedded in the concrete facade. Here you can see the system under construction. This means we could create a very thin facade that makes the big blocks appear transparent, both from inside and outside. Koning achieved a LEED Platinum certificate. In this photo, you can see the roof with the PV panels that provide energy to the building. This image shows the installation for the underfloor heating system using a geothermal source. While here, we use separate machines for each classroom to avoid a centralized system. This was very efficient in terms of for energy consumption. This photo shows the shading along the windows. We also use a mesh for the upper floors to protect the building from the solar gain and optimize the thermal performance. Again, this is a Sydney project. When complete, it will be the first public art museum in Australia to achieve the highest environmental standard for design with a 6-star Green Star rating. We decided to use lammed earth for this project to reduce the carbon footprint of the building. Here you can see a mock-up from the site construction. This is the oil tank. We decided to reuse this space as a part of our exhibition spaces. In this museum, people can enjoy both art and the beautiful, outstanding views toward the water. Thank you very much.
So thanks for that lecture, and we fortunately had a chance to ask a follow-up question, which is buildings can significantly change landscape of the city. Site proposal has 3 different elevations from river to the railway track. How much should cultural venues change this kind of urban landscapes?
This type of project should work on many levels: urban scale, neighborhood scale, human scale. At the urban scale, the importance of architecture is to create sense of place. This type of venue can become a symbol of change and regeneration, a new image for the city. This project is an opportunity to transform traffic intersection that site in a pivot position on the river. It shows continuity with its environment and the local culture, but at the same time create a new landscape. At the neighborhood scale, the building needs to be adapted by the local population. Cultural buildings have a particular power to do this. They can be more than just a venue. They can be social spaces that become an integral part of street life. They should have an important influence beyond the site itself, not only toward the primary aspect, in this case the river and old city, but also towards the areas that are sometimes neglected, creating economic and social ripple through neighborhood. Over time, the influence of successful strategy extends far beyond the project itself. At a human scale, This type of project can be a new experience, an unfamiliar spatial organization that generates new type of activity. The combination of programs can also create unlikely dialogues and encounters, while the architecture can reveal things that are usually hidden. It can generate new curiosities and create new behaviors.
Great, thank you for that answer. And we will continue with SANAA in the part with Q&A. But now it's time for another pre-recorded lecture of Sou Fujimoto himself. The reason is obvious, it was recorded on the other side of the world, so due to absolutely different time zone. So now I will ask my colleague for a lecture of Mr. Sou Fujimoto.
Hello, this is Sou Fujimoto from Tokyo and Paris. And yeah, this is really great honor for me to have this lecture series in this special occasion. So I'm very, very happy to do this today. So today I will talk in about 15 minutes about 3 of my projects, and then I will answer to the question. So I will share the screen in just a moment. I hope you see this. Okay, so yes, my architecture is always dealing with the topic, important point of something between architecture and nature, or nature and architecture. Because I believe in our living environment, we have, of course, architecture as an important things, but at the same time, we have nature. And then both of the nature and architecture should be always well coexist and well collaborate and create some kind of nice integrations to each other. That is the key point, I think, for our future living environment, how to deal with nature and how to understand the architecture as part of the nature and so on. So this is quite important topic for me. And especially, this is really relating to my personal background, because I was born and grown up in Hokkaido. It's the northern island of Japan, full of nature. So I was playing around in the forest in my childhood days, so growing up in the nature. And then I moved to Tokyo when I entered to the university to start to learn architecture. Then, as you can see in this image, it is really completely like an opposite situation. The Tokyo, it's really like artificial and like a kind of a messy situations, but still the urban context of Tokyo is very important and inspiring for me. So that means I have 2 backgrounds, nature and artifacts. And then for me, I like to make beautiful mixtures of them to create a better living environment. So I have both of them. And then I like to have like a beautiful integration of both of them. So this first project is in Montpellier and in France. It's the south of France, so the Mediterranean climate is really beautiful and calm and warm. Even in the wintertime, you can have a lunch on the exterior terrace. So that has been their like a heart of their lifestyle. So even we make the contemporary architecture for the future, I like to respect their beautiful climate, their lifestyle, and then create such a wonderful place for the people. Then finally, our solution was to have such a large balconies, so many balconies sticking out from the apartment. And finally, it looks like a kind of pineapples or the pine cones or something like that. So it's like of course, it is artificial architecture, but it looks organic, more organic. And then you can see how so many balconies, and the largest one is 5 meter wide and 8 meter deep. So it's really huge. And we have around 200 balconies over there. And this is a view from one of the balconies. It's yeah, full of the greens. But important and quite interesting things is, if you see this image, then you can see neighbors' balconies are floating around you with the proper distances. But still, you can have like the communications, conversations, while you can have like a proper privacies. And which means in this housing, the people are not divided in their too much personalized situations, but they can have like a good communications, like the community or the neighborhood situations. And I think from now for the future, it is very important to re-achieve such kind of the interrelationships, good relationships with the neighbors, between people and people, to have the community feelings so that the people can feel they are living together, they are not isolated. This is like the one of the strong characteristics of architecture, to create such the atmosphere or the feelings in which the people can feel they are kind of connected. So this project is not just, how to say, of course, visually it is so like a strong impressions, but the experience-wise or the life on it is more like a relating to such a fundamental values of our life and our society itself. Yeah, this is another view of the balconies. And sometimes, yeah, the housing, the apartment is a duplex, the 2 levels, and then the balcony is 2 levels, and then linked to each other. And this is like alongside the river. So we respect the flow of the green areas, green parks, even within our plot. So that is why the building is more close to the roundabout, and then respecting the view from the apartment above. And then finally, the shape is more like a curved organic shape. And then that is why we have such a like a softly organic expressions together with the balconies. This is an aerial view. And this is just like right after the completion, but now all the balconies are occupied by so many furnitures and the greens and every like a life on it. You can see even from outside, not only between the people who are living there, but for the people of the surrounding neighbor, this apartment is very open. So people can feel they are like living together with us. It's not like isolated one volumes of the buildings, but it's more like an open field, and always like has an interfaces to make a communications to the neighbors, to the people who are living there. So this kind of the feelings, the many different kind of the links and the relationships and the connections and the organic interrelationships are the very important point for this project. Again, yeah, this is a view. So the second one is, it's rather like it's more than 10 years ago, but it was like the cultural complex right next to the river in Belgrade, the Sava River. This is the view. And the location was very special because this is right next to the old city of Belgrade. And then on the left hand, you can have like a heritage fortress area. And then front side, you have a river. So historically, geographically, and yeah, the surrounding is quite like interesting. And then they like to have kind of this urban plaza with the cultural and commercial programs in it. And this is also was intended to be like the hub for the traffics. So the trams and the taxis and water taxis and the buses and of course the pedestrians, all of those kind of the mobility are coming here together to make like the junction and the links and so on. So we thought the characteristics of the plot and then the characteristics of the programs, it's like all of them are like the flow, in a sense, the flow of the river and the flow of the traffics, and then the flow of the histories. And then all the flows are like coming here to make a spiral to create really central plaza in the middle, but it's not like a static plaza. It is more like the plaza with a dynamism in it. So keeping many different flows from many different directions, linking the old city to the fortress or the river to the shopping areas. All of those flows are coming here. So it's like a hub of the flow. And then we thought it is like a fantastic idea to give the shape of this flow itself as an architecture. So flow itself become architecture itself. And that is why finally we made those kind of the spiral flows, and which is like a floating slabs. And then we can have the interior spaces between those slabs, or in the middle we have a central plaza, so that all the people can see this central focal point, and then all of those trams and traffics are coming along those flows. So all of the functions and all of those kind of the reaction to the surroundings are like solved by the architecture language of the flow. So this is like the view in the middle of the slabs, floating slabs. And it is like the kind of amazing mixtures of the architecture and landscape and an urban like a strategy, and plaza and street and the flow itself. So there are no clear divisions between architecture and the city and the landscape here, but all of them are melting together. Yeah, we won the first prize in this competition, but finally, unfortunately, the project was stopped. But still, it is, for me, it's quite like an exciting project for me, because it is something beyond the normal, like a single definition of the architecture, but it's more relating to the surrounding context and starts to melt all of the urban situation, architecture, and the human behaviors, human flows, and the landscaping and the natures together to create the place and a field for the people. So this is the last one today I will introduce. It is just finished in Budapest, the Forest of the Music. It's a house of Hungarian music. This is the renderings we made for the competition. And it's the site is in the middle of the beautiful park, beautiful forest. And then the whole park has so many different cultural buildings. Some of them are quite old buildings, and some of them could be the new one, like our buildings. And especially this kind of the forest feelings is the starting point of our inspiration. And we thought it could be like a dreamlike experience to listen to the music in the middle of the forest without any architecture. So playing in the middle of the forest, playing the music, and then listen to the music. So this was the very, very starting point. And then we like try to translate the forest into architecture. Of course, satisfying the complicated functions, because we have the music museum, and then the music performance spaces, and then music education spaces. And finally, we made those kind of the large, floating large roof. And then on the basement, we have a large, huge exhibition space for the museum. And then on the roof, within the roof, we have education programs. And then on the ground level, covered by the roof, we have like a transparent music performance space, which is really open to the forest. So people could feel that they are playing the music in the middle of the forest, and then people, audience could feel like listen to the music and the concert in the middle of the forest. So this is the site plan. So this is the diagrams to show the layout of the programs. And then finally, yeah, this spring, it's done. And yeah, it's floating volumes. And then these transparent areas on the ground level is like the open foyer, lobby, and the performance space, like a music hall. This is an aerial view. Then in the spring, yeah, all the leaves get greens, and then it will be really in the middle of the green forest. So this is the roof photo. We have many openings on the roof. Some of them are skylights, some of them are perforating to have the daylight on the concert hall, and some of them has like just an open hole, which has like existing trees going through the roof. So it is more like not like a dividing the architecture and the forest, but it's more like architecture and forest are melting, intersecting to each other, coexisting to each other. So this is a view from the inside. And then this, like a special ceiling, is like a try to create a reinterpretation of the tree leaves and in the forest, and putting those kind of the aluminum plates of the such kind of those special shapes. And then here we try to make the architecture itself is more fragmented and then more melting into the natural forest. This is the small lecture space. Yeah, could be used for the concert, of course. And this is the open halls. And then this is a view of the exterior performance spaces under the roof. So this is the exterior spaces. And then this color of the gold, because the tree leaves is changing their colors. The springtime, they have like a light greens. And then in the summertime, it's more like a stronger, darker greens. And then in the autumn, it gets more like a yellow or a gold or the red colors. And then in the wintertime, those kind of the grayish feelings. So I think if you use, for example, the green color, it looks very too much like fitting to some specific seasons. But the golden color could be always harmonized with the different situation, especially in the winter time, even no tree leaves and grayish feelings, but those kind of the warm color, warm atmosphere of the golden color creates like the destination feelings and special heartwarming feelings here. And also I got an inspiration from the historical music academy in the middle of the city of Budapest, which has like a beautiful concert hall. And then this interior of this music academy main hall is goldish. And then they have like a kind of a beautiful sculptures of the tree leaves painted in gold all around, covering the whole interior. So that was also like a strong inspirations for me. And then we have the staircases to connect the basement and the ground level and the upper level, which is something like this. Then this is the underground areas as staircase. And then we have more like a white lobby spaces for the exhibition space. And then we have large exhibition space. And this is the upstairs education area, like a library area, which is also has those skylights perforating through the roof. Then we have the golden color as well. So all those kind of the perforations has the goldish colors so that people can feel they're all surrounded with those kind of the golden leaves and golden daylight within it. Again, coming back to the lobby space, this like a bottom has a glass which has a skylights on the base. You can see down, look down to the basement. That is making the reflections. And this is another view through the existing trees. So you can feel how we imagine those artificial architecture is like a melting into the real forest. And those, together with those golden colors, the whole environment made by this architecture is more like the beautiful melting situation between artifacts and the nature. And this is an evening view. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to experience in every different seasons and every different moment with a different, how to say, way to use it, like a more classical concert or contemporary music or whatever kind of the performances on the lobby spaces or those exterior spaces, all of those kind of the different activities relating to the music could be happening here. And hopefully, yeah, the people in Budapest could enjoy just kind of visiting this place as part of the beautiful forest, or sometimes, yeah, join to the beautiful music concert and so on. So again, coming back to the title, the Between Nature and Architecture, because this is like an endless fundamental question. So whatever kind of the new way to integrate nature and artifacts could be there. So our challenges could continue and try to create the better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
So, unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Fujimoto here in camp to ask him a question, but we had a chance to ask a question before. So the follow-up questions is, how can a natural element such as a river influence the design and landscaping of the public space in general?
Mm-hmm. You mean the river? Yeah, it's like a river is, as relating to the project in Belgrade, the river is like the flow of the life, I think, because the ancient village started from the riverside or waterside, and then the flow of the river is always like providing the fresh waters and so on. So even in our contemporary life, the river, most of the important city is always belongs to the river, like the Prague or like Tokyo, of course, and Paris and London and New York. And I believe, so the river is like the heart of our life and the community. River is sometimes like the place of the community and the communications, and which is like dividing, but at the same time it is connecting, and which is like the flow of the traffic, but at the same time it is like the beauty of the nature, and it is always like a changing and so on. And especially the flow of the river, like a flow of the energy, we can say, is like could be the key for our future, because we can say everything is like a flow. The flow of the people, traffic, energy, informations, the communication is also like the flow. And of course, the seasons is changing, and then wind, the air, flow of the air, and so on. So all of those kind of the dynamism of the life and the dynamism of nature could be related to the flow. That is why the river is like a kind of one of the symbol of those kind of the flow and the symbol of our life. That is why I'm, always like get an inspiration from those kind of the flow and the river. And I believe we can create the place for the people relating to the river and the flow. So anyway, so that's why the river is very important and full of the inspiration for me. Thank you.
So thanks to Tokyo, to Mr. Fujimoto for this pre-recorded lecture. As I mentioned at the beginning of the evening, you have a chance to ask us a question. There will be a follow-up Q&A, so you can use slido.com, and if you will use hashtag #CampuOnline, you will enter our chat room and you have a chance to ask us a question. But now we had a chance to see the lecture of Signe Kongebro from Henning Larsen. Welcome to camp.
Thank you.
It's an honor for us to have you here in camp and see you alive. How are you in Copenhagen? Are you in Copenhagen?
Yes, I'm in Copenhagen, and I'm actually at home because it's also evening here, and I'm super inspired by the two lectures we have just seen, and I hope that I can contribute with our position in terms of urban talks.
Great, awesome. So thank you for your decision to join us, and now it's time for your lecture, and there will be follow-up question for you too.
So my name is Signe Kongebro. I'm a global design director at Henning Larsen, and I will talk a little about departuring from urbanism into cultural building. What are the link between the two different typologies in architecture? And from there on, I will quote sort of our position. It is in urbanism that we dream what we as a society can become, because urbanism is always about the future. And what is important here is that the questions we ask in the beginning, before the project starts, the dreams we have, the ethics we have in our society, and dealing with planetary crises. Then we do a design, and afterwards we talk about the impact we create, both on society, on cultural identity, but also environmental issues. So design is somehow a medium actually to achieve things. And exactly both urbanism and cultural buildings are the two typologies in architecture that I would say create the most emotions and touch upon a society's ethics. This is where you involve society, you involve people, because it is public places. And these are just two examples. It's one from Hapa, a concert hall I will show later, and then it's from Gdansk Imperial Shipyard. And these two images also shows that both cultural buildings and public spaces are gathering places. This is also where people create memories and meaningful experiences. And this is why these places become so important, not only for cities and nations, but also for architects. This is why we are all here tonight. And one example is, of course, the Gdansk Imperial Shipyard. This is where there was a labor strike in 1970, and it actually led to improvement of labor rights and political structure. So, of course, when we did sort of a transformation, urban transformation of that shipyard, that was in our mind to unleash that cultural heritage, working with a new agenda for the Gdansk area. So, of course, building upon a place, on a site and a destination, and sort of build up towards a new future. And these are some of the images from the area. Another example I want to mention is a new city we're doing in Copenhagen. Everyone, or a lot of people, has been very curious or anxious about, can you keep our wild nature? This is what it says here in Danish on the wall. And there was a lot of demonstrations. Don't take away the green areas, and we want to participate, or we want to understand what you're doing. And this area is outside Copenhagen, and there was a lot of demonstrations. And we did a design where we wanted to create as most nature as possible, also creating a new urban typology that has not been seen before, where you in the corner up in the left, you can see that fossil-driven infrastructure way of urban planning. We wanted to create a more carbon neutral way of living, where cars were not dominating the way we structured the city, but nature was. And this is why we created these 3 very organic islands where nature could flow in between these small islands. And you would also create sort of a U-shape block typology where nature could sort of go into these courtyards. That was very important for us, that the nature was very dominant in the plan. And the whole city, it is for 5,000 inhabitants. It's all made of wood. That's a different story that I'm not going to talk about now. But for us doing this, the urban approach here was preservation of biodiversity and actually reinforce that. And that led to a lot of good discussions with all citizens on how design also can benefit to create a sort of future-proof urban scheme. And let me move into architecture, because design and architecture can be a medium to create cultural and societal change. I think we're all aware of this. And I think what is important for us when we work with this, we have to think about exactly how we do the design. And this is the opera in Copenhagen we did many years ago. And what you see here is that this place has become a destination, not because of the auditorium and the operas taking place inside the building, but because of the big roof, placement at the inner harbor of Copenhagen, and all the things going on around this roof. So suddenly you will have a Red Bull competition from the roof diving into the harbor. And of course, sort of the opera becomes sort of the backdrop for this event. It's also about creating plazas around the architecture, having a possibility of actually making outdoor performances, or having a more open-ended, wild, you can say art culture around the building. So you will have something that is very formal, and you will have something that is not so formal and more unprogrammed. I will just show you 2 projects of ours. One is Hapa Concert Hall and Conference Center in Iceland. It is located right at the edge of the waterfront, and you will see Reykjavik here, and you will have the sea out there. So this is the 2 views you have sitting on that edge. You will have the beautiful nature looking out, and you also have the sort of the more simple around the harbor. You see harbor up in the right picture. So what we did is that we actually changed the whole idea about making the main entrance towards the city, instead of having the main entrance towards the nature part. That would be sort of the classical way of dealing with this. But actually turning this into the city, we made a plaza before the building, in front of the building, but also this building became sort of a community space for Icelandic people. And so going from sort of a more formal way of understanding cultural buildings, actually breaking the building a little down to have the foyer, the lobby, the activities in front of the house, becoming a public area that could be inhabited all day and all night and during all week. And what we did in the design of the building was creating these more formal halls where you have all the concerts and conferences, and make this more loose skin around the building. So there will be a lot of extra space around, and this space is used for a lot of stuff. So here you have the halls, but here you see an example of the foyer and how it's designed, and it's also very spatial. And there's a lot of people visiting this, even though when there's no concert or there's no conference, people just go there to sit, read, meet with friends, meet with families. And we have a lot of activities going on around the more formal program. We have kindergartens coming every day doing exercise. We have informal concerts. We have yoga classes. So we have a lot of things that we didn't know of when we did the architecture, because we only got a design brief in a classical way, but then people sort of participated and took over the house. In a way, you can say design is very important, and you need, of course, to create a design that is very spectacular. And for us, it was also the way we did the facade in collaboration with the artist Olaf Eliasson, making these basalt facades are inspired by the basalt, Icelandic basalt stone, creating these enormous three-dimensional facade. This is some of the Insta pictures from today. I took at the, if you hashtag Kahaba Concert Hall, and you could see on all these images that it is really a signature. This is something that matters. It has a beauty and it reflects light, and it becomes nature in itself. It is like being underwater and the light is changing. So it's not literally nature, but it is sort of imagining like being in a piece of nature. And the good thing about this project is that we have 2,300,000 visitors every year. There are 4 informal events every day. There are 60 concerts in average every month, with more than 2,000 performers. And that was not the intent from the beginning. They talked about 500,000 visitors, but suddenly this building became sort of a destination for not only tourists, but also for the Icelandic people. The Icelandic people in average visit this building 4 times a year. And it is not only about opening hours, it is about true openness. And the last project I just want to show is our Mosgard Museum in the outskirts of the 2nd largest city of Denmark. So you have an old museum here, and then this beautiful nature. And we were looking, how can we create a museum here, create a destination? It's nice nature. It's not something spectacular. You couldn't really see far and so on. And then we did this design where we lifted up the existing nature, creating the museum underneath, showing the history of Denmark with all the heritage and cultural artifacts. But what we did creating this roof was we created the destination. Suddenly, people came here, not even going into the museum, and then this became something very important for Aarhus city. And as you see here, it is the biggest ski slope whatsoever in Jutland. So a lot of things were actually happening on this roof, unintended. And again, programming for the unexpected is also part of doing a cultural building, because you create emotions, and if you're too controlled in that design, you have to somehow leave something back to the people. And the good thing about this is that it actually doubled. It has 5 times more visitors. Now we did this design. 2/3 are coming from outside Aarhus, so that also brings a lot of tourists to the city. And of course, we have a lot of people coming to the rooftop because it's just open. You don't have to get a ticket or anything to access this roof. So day and night, you will see people coming here because it has become a destination 10 kilometers outside of Aarhus. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for the lecture. My question is, what is the recipe to design building that is open to everybody, even if there is a specific primary function? Is there one or more things that are must-have?
Yeah, I can repeat again. I think it's important that we do buildings that are not where the free and sort of open areas where you don't have to buy a ticket, they are very important for people to sort of subscribe to the destination. Because cultural buildings is sort of, it's something we all participate to pay for. It's something that is that creates a cultural heritage of our society and our nations, and they become also often very international destinations. So I think keeping this openness, really discussing where are the speed gates and where do you enter and where do you pay is very important. And of course, the outside is also part of the public stage, you can say. This is where people meet. This is where they interact, just around the building. So there is sort of a scaling through the public area outside, the foyer, or all the indoor spaces or covered spaces in and around the cultural building. And then you have sort of the main functions. Yeah, that would be my recipe.
How people can accommodate even very unusual and unfamiliar architecture?
Could you repeat, sorry?
If you think that this is the way how people can accommodate even very unusual architecture, very modern.
Yeah, even better, because you need experiences, and the experiences also comes through being surprised and sort of inspired by beautiful architecture.
Okay, thank you very much. So this was Signe Kongebro, Global Design Director in Henning Larsen, and we will meet later. And now it's time for Mr. Winnie Maas, co-founder of MVRDV Studio, and it's time for his lecture. Welcome to camp.
Okay, that's good. Thanks again for this forum, and it is indeed a good way to raise the standards and to discuss qualities of such an important, say, enterprise that you are undertaking. What I will contribute today in respect of the project, the Prague Philharmonic, is to discuss, like also others are doing, but what can cultural buildings do? How can they become a machine or a vehicle or a device for development? And especially, what can this cultural building do? I think that is also sometimes we have to become specific. There are generic qualities for a public building, but also there are there's very contextual ones that are to be discussed. I do this reflection in 8 chapters, this 15 minutes. So let's go to chapter 1. I take you for a moment to Tainan. That is a place in Taiwan, very vulnerable site at this very moment. And what can we learn from, say, a pool, a park that we made in Tainan? Why is it so peculiar? It used to be, of course, part of Formosa, an island that was full of nature and had this kind of images. And then urbanism came in, and Tainan has, where are my trees? Where is my my nature in that? So we were asked to think about this this Chinese department store to transform that into a park. So what to do when you have this giant building? Then you ruin it. Literally, you turn it into a place of memory, and you flood it. And why flooding? Because then it can become a cooler place, cooling down the city and therefore attracting people. I was surprised by this simple act of transforming this building into this swimmable ruin. And maybe because people liked this drop of temperature. It was also a moment that Asian culture suddenly popped out in European dress codes. I mean, this could have been in Denmark, but you never expected that in in Taiwan. It was a place where we concentrated on the materials so that you would have like a dengue-free environment where you could swim all over the year, and also day and night. So here queuing up people at a certain moment to go into this park, and it's completely open and free, and you don't have to pay anything, and there is no cafe or bar. You take your own sandwiches and your own rice and sit and watch each other and enjoy simply the temperature drop in that case. So learning from that, how to attract people and how to comfort them, how to give them this freedom is and how to make it hyper pleasant is in a way that it's not like a shopping mall, of course, because that's they try to do that also, but the distinction is its freedom is what we try to attend to do in Tainan. Second chapter on what did we learn from Rotterdam's market hall. Some of you might know it. It is and it reflects on the city that used to be like this, say cute and beautiful European, then bang, one bombardment one day, and it flattens out the whole history. And exactly that has given, say, Rotterdam a very specific type of urbanism, an urbanism that goes on for like 70 years already, and that every 10 years, another generation builds something to it. And it makes, I think, the most beautiful collection of architects and architectures that respect each other. And it is like a culture of variety and diversity expressed in architecture and celebrated by its respect that is there. And I think that is also an important element to find out. Then on this spot, we were asked to make actually a mixed development of housing and also covered markets that extends the outdoor market. So how to do that? Then you have these 250 units, you stack them on top of each other, and you let them kiss, and they span freely over this new public market. You use social and collective housing to make this new space in Rotterdam, with, say, the biggest window thinkable, where further, say, all the vendors make their stalls in it where you feel that you can walk in between and explore the variety of things that are so important in our culture, and where on top you can sit and eat. And so this combination of buying and enjoying was combined, and then making this with an artist. This perspective on the dome that leads to, I would say, an advertisement of good food, and it became a vehicle for the vendors and the farmers to have a place to express that in a monumental way. And in that painting, people live, and they all have their window that looks to the market and goes over it, and they become actually these 250 families become the advocates of the market. No developer or investor can change that without their voices. And they all have their windows, say, to the market, also from the bedroom, and that becomes an act like paintings. And yes, you can work next to that window, and yes, you can stand on top of a window. You can play Lego on top of that window and look to the market, and that celebrates together this new space in Rotterdam with a view to the environment. Covering, of course, with Rotterdamness, and by this the same tiles as the pavements in Rotterdam, we express also the situation as it is. And somehow I think this sympathetic, I guess, approach of making a market lead to a lot of usage, more than 8 million visitors a year, so it's like almost as busy as Euro Disney, and put also finally Rotterdam in the Lonely Planet and it became a place for Rotterdammers to celebrate their marriage or to be part of it. That turns a building into publicness. That is where somehow you touch the emotions of people and give it like a meaning. Third thought, again, Rotterdam, because some of you have maybe visited the Rotterdam's Depot, the art archive recently. where, say, a cultural and public institution has to be invented because it was opening the archives. It is next to the Museum Boijmans van Beuningen in the very heart of Rotterdam, the so-called Museum Park. And where here you can see an image, the Boijmans on the left, on the right side, the Central Hospital, and in the middle, a park, which actually is not a park, but a sequence of gardens. So the key issue of the whole problem is our water problem. Flooding is intensely happening and more in the future. That happens in the underground. All the water comes to this area specifically and bends against the parking garage and goes back. So nothing would grow on it. But it was also the raison d'être of here an image of the museum director, where the Mondriaans and Hieronymus Bos paintings were flooded in its cellars, and an alarm bell went off. And how can you make then a new, say, archive building, storage building? So the government said, okay, let's do it, but then in a periphery. And Charles X and me said, no, we shouldn't do that. We should have it in the center and then transform it into a public depot so that you can enter it wherever and all day, 24/7 in all its pieces. Then we had to raise extra money. So we studied and made a campaign how to make it. So first design was on one spot. We made 10 spots to convince the government to make a public building out of an enclosed, say, refrigerator or box. And then, but here, for instance, one where you can lift the whole building, make 4 columns, turn it into a table, and say the Mona Lisa comes down to this new ballroom in the city. That helped to raise the budget for an extra 80%, and that's exactly the need, the difference between a public depot and, say, an enclosed depot, and turns it into maybe a new device of experiencing and understanding art, and be also proud on art. It becomes a tool. So how to do that? On this park, in the middle of the institutes, you have to make a form that doesn't copy the others or that absorbs everybody to participate in this operation. So how to do that is when you have this site, when you have to respect some of the logistics on the site. And this program is fat, 15,000 square meters on a park. How can you do that? How can I keep my innocence as a landscape architect to allow for a building that is loving the landscape, even with a mainly enclosed piece? So we made it turn into a round building so that you can walk around, no dangerous corners. We made the footprint almost nothing so that the water can go below and the plaza becomes the biggest. And then you can have also like a roof, which is the biggest possible by not making it too fat. That leads to walks around it, like you can see here. Then we clad it with, say, mirrorish glass, and that has an effect that visually you have a dramatic, say, an enlargement of the site. You can reflect the plaza, you can look around the corner, you can enlarge the sky, like in the famous Dutch paintings of the 17th century. And then you have also a place where you reuse the old trees and put them on top of this, say, the depot to compensate this act of living with nature and treating it well. That creates a new landscape on the floor for activities, and it forms like a new room in the sequence of gardens of the museum park. And they just come in this new forest on the ground. In orange, you see the public part, and in the other part is the private part, as small as possible. You go up to the art, which is higher, of course, +7 meters to protect itself against the sea. You come in a central void where that goes all in the building, where you can walk around, so that you can go in all the different climates, 50 climates in total, because of the different art pieces, and you travel through the central void where things come out and are shown to the world, day and night. As the museum is open. And on every spot, there is an extra activity to restore the building, to have a school class, to look to elements, to share it. And you can enter every piece wherever you want. And there you can open up the fences, and you can find your painting of what you would like, and end up of your journey in the gardens where art is exhibited, in the gallery restaurant where art is also participating. So it's a true, say, piece of collaboration. And that transforms this park into something like this, where it becomes a tool to enlarge itself and to position it in a perspective of the city. It is, as I said, also a project with many projects in a project. And I want to express that because I think public art is like public buildings are inviting people. And that would mean that these many collaborations could lead also to a new Gesamtkunstwerk. We presented that in the Monocle on one moment, all these authors that are participating. I'm just an urbanist in that sense and try to make in the wake all these different artists and that are working on it. Yes, the word Gesamtkunstwerk becomes then another word. It's not made by, like in Austrian times, by one person, it becomes by many. And I present some of you. This is the vessel makers. It's not an artist group, they're engineers. In order to make, don't touch the water, the thinnest piles have to be invented. And on top of that, this vessel is made as an Ark of Noah due to its balance of weight and floating makes this vessel as a tool that can survive the floods in the future. We have the mirror makers that were based in China and where we bent glass in all its direction and invented a new kind of say mirror stuff inside in the layers, so that could be then shipped, and that could be tested and could be awarded. No brown glass; it should be as neutral as possible. And the good thing, it's recyclable. You can ship it back, and then you can make it better when it doesn't fit. And of course, it should not touch the earth. So the lowest part is also horizontal and has triple curves. The door makers that somehow made this kind of simsalabim doors, so that or Thunderbirds 5, where you could go in and wait for the door to be opened, is also a group of people that could only do it by them. And of course, the curators that made in between our stairs so many boxes where you can meet art and meet in different perspectives. You can look from them to the front, to the back. You see the signatures. You see how they are pulled out of the archives and then shown in a certain way for curators, for other kind of museums. The windows are an important piece of art. They show them to these different climates.
Yeah.
And of course this, how to pull out the art almost in a democratic way. You can find your own, say, collection that comes back to it. It's a project in a project to understand that. And then people show their pieces of collection like this carpet on which you can stand and look down or up. But also the food makers are part of it and make this kind of flippable tables to live with art in the environment. Or the forest makers, landscape architects that train trees to grow horizontally, put them on top, unfold the roots that kiss each other. And then in a year, you have this effect. And even with the storms of last week, it becomes like a forest to walk in. And next year, you see art emerging from this forest and be put in as all of those in-between spaces where the archive can show itself. And with that, I think we have this group portrait of all these collaborators, but also of the city. This is the last, one could say, object in the city that loves all the objects of Rotterdam and that come together in this place. I end tonight the Pepilotti Rist in Rotterdam with the canvas she made, presenting films on top of the plaza with mirrors in the building. It becomes three-dimensional, and she then made actually this experience even more beautiful. And it's a storyline that every night appears now in Rotterdam, and is after COVID turning into a place to catch up with each other. And then indeed reactions. Today's Instagrammable pictures, but also this article in the New York Times, which says that Rotterdam with this picture has a nicer skyline than Manhattan. So chapter 4, what can cultural buildings in general do? I give some categories. They can be guiding, like these examples somehow a little bit try to show. They can be exemplary on many levels, on sustainability, on inclusivity, please, on beauty, and on politics also. We cannot avoid that part. But maybe most, they can help us on hope and on perspective, especially these days. B, they can solve problematic sites, also like Bookme. C, they can create places for everybody. It is to gather, to meet, love, to create and talk, to discuss and criticize, to freely and endlessly, unprogrammed and surprisingly. D, they can put the city on a global map and inspire not only the citizens, but also the world. And exactly is that what we need now. And 5, I go to the next chapter then. How to apply that in Prague. Now Prague. Funnily, Prague is beautiful and maybe too beautiful in its sense. It has inspired many artists and to photograph or to paint it. It is rich, it's historical, it's super cozy, and it's beautiful. But funnily, if I go around, it can be also quite gray, mystic, old, a little bit depressive and foggy. It is easy to disappear in this maze. I call it a spatial paradox that is celebrated in its culture and also in its politics, to be honest, because it's quite politicized and polarized between fear and desire, between action and doing nothing, between old and young, between introvert and extrovert, and ultimately between rationale and emotional. That is actually, I would say, the Prague paradox, which I somehow like. That brings us to the 6th chapter. What about Bubny then? Bubny is this place currently. It is not about that kind of city. It's close to the center, but doesn't at all look like the old Prague. Flat, industrialized, a little bit like a periphery. It demands a sparkling answer, to be honest. And that is able to show. That is able to show and unify these oppositions or paradoxes through beauty, through the romance, through the music, through the culture, through the participants. That's new life. And then it can be between classical and contemporary, between the rational of making a building and emotional of the music, and between being modest and present is what it can do. 2006, I look back to Bubny, where we tried to work on this competition, where this site is now there. And when you look to the site between Letna and Ološevice, it is we try to make as many streets that link to each other, and then keep a place open on the Vltava to present itself. That would transform this into a unification of the different districts. Prague would continue while keeping a place to celebrate on the background of this city. It's new jewels. And then 2021, I'm happy that that is somehow happening in another language, in architecture, where in red you see the new place appearing with the background Bubny as a continuity. It's in itself. Also a paradox of continuity and speaking out is happening on that side. Chapter 7, again, the paradox on beauty that I see in Prague and in the Czech Republic. You see, of course, cultural institutions like this, which are stable, classical in its sense, with an interior that has Barockish elements in its most beautiful way. On the other hand, you see new kind of modernists coming up with a very poetic way that celebrates some parts of the culture of glass and crystal and that continues in some of this, say, doubleness of Prague. When I go into this building, I see incredible art installations that are made by this different, artists in glass, where a sea of glass is continuing the Vltava in this project, and where Moser and others do it almost in a cubistic way. I see this also as an ecological paradox between stone and glass that is in this. And I take you for a moment to Amsterdam, where again, I can have glass, I can melt it again, and I can turn it into stones. And for me, somehow, this is a symbolical way of dealing with beauty and stability. Chanel did make it in the crystal houses with us in Amsterdam, where they become solid, where they lighten up, and the interior becomes sprinkled with it. And then when you go obliquely, it opens itself to the world. This Amsterdam houses and shows also this kind of paradox that we are facing. Paradoxes are beautiful, and that's the learning lesson of Prague. But of course, it needs courage in the end. And that's my 8th observation on what a public building could do, and especially in Prague, and especially on this moment. The act of making a new philharmonic is, per definition, courageous and should be immediately inspiring for the viewers, for the users, for the musicians, for the people that collaborate with them, for the 24/7 aspect of dealing with new music. But especially these days, I get a kind of emotional to how that role can be done. Courage to make something beautiful and that captivates attention over, say, Eastern Europe and the world, and ridiculous crudeness is what this building can be about. Enlarging beauty and art should be responding to that, and by a sparkling, eye and ear-catching answer is what we try to do. And then, when I take this picture from a cab and look to the other building, how you how these institutions can somehow not only protest but find an answer to this aspect, then I try to mimic that a little bit in my office the last week, inspired by you, by the Rodolphinem, to see that somehow out in it. And I see that as a very important part of this coincidence that this competition is happening, to make this yell out of that is I think the most public answer that this specific building can do in this time. I thank you very much for this attention.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I have a question for you. You mentioned Rotterdam many times, and you mentioned that it's a nice collection of architecture that respects each other. And I would like to ask you if there is, do you think that being iconic or being respectful and humble, do you think that these things are opposite to each other? Is there a moment when you are designing a new building, when you have to decide if the building will be iconic or if it will be respectful and humble, and if it blends with the rest of the city?
It's a good question when you should expose yourself and when to come out. And of course, music is, you serve music, and that should be the best. But I'm aware that, say, a philharmonic in general has a certain amount of pride, and that is because it wants to attract more people. It wants to emphasize the power of it a little bit. I think there are not so many opportunities in a city when you can take the content as a way to make it stronger, to stand out a little bit, and that you forget the humbleness of everything. And if everything becomes humble, then I don't know how to communicate anymore. So there's a danger in doing humble everything in everywhere. And of course there should be a reason when you can go out of that. I would recommend that in a culture like in Prague, where you did your cathedrals, where you did your churches, and made your beautiful pieces within the humbleness of the tapestry of blocks, that you give space to find a new way of definition this iconicness. Icons are not bad. No, they are vehicles of explaining what could be the future, of explaining what beauty can be, of explaining what a Czech culture can be, and how you can contribute to a wider content. They are not money driven at all. You do that for the same price, and you do it, but you give space to think a little bit further, is what it says. Please, if you don't take that opportunity, then I start to cry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that answer. We will follow up with Q&A, but now it's time for another lecture. It will be with Alberto Veiga from Barozzi Veiga. So welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, great. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for let us have this opportunity to talk about Prague and the way we see public architecture.
Yes, thank you very much for the decision to join us this evening. It's an honor for us. And now it's time for your lecture, so please start. We are looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm going to use this opportunity just to try to explain you through three public projects that we did in the past. Somehow the way we approach to not just public architecture, but public architecture, city, public space, and some of the reflections and ideas that we have always when we deal with this kind of programs. I think that probably the best sample for the Prague Philharmonic competition is the project that we did and we built in Szczecin in Poland, the Philharmony. Szczecin is a place, it's a city placed in the northwest of Poland, close to the border to Germany. And somehow it's a mix of things. It's a mix of different layers. There is, of course, not just, I mean, the housing or the icons that appear within the city, like the cathedral or the castle, is somehow a contemporary mix of different elements that define a character somehow. When we did this project, we had to deal with the idea of how to achieve the right character, how to achieve the right attitude with our architecture within this place in order to build something specific and something that could match with the idea that a philharmony needs to transmit. Of course, when you deal with this kind of programs, I mean, to build a philharmony means to build somehow an ensemble, to compose something based on the specific of the sites somehow, but trying to achieve which is the essence of the sites too. I think that's the main challenge with this kind of buildings, know how to achieve the essence. In this case, in the case of the Philharmony, try to recover the importance of this context, of this place, this specific corner within the neighborhood, try to recover the importance of an element that expresses somehow a new identity, not just for this neighborhood or for this site, but for the city too. You know, in the case of Szczecin, the building, playing with references of the surroundings, but playing with the idea of somehow freedom, playing with the roofs, playing with the skylight. I think the building tried to express somehow a new identity based on the main characteristics of the site, but at the same time tries to explore somehow how to transmit these ideas in a strong and an expressive way. The Philharmony, it's a place that basically needs to fulfill all the interiors with activity, needs to provoke the public, needs to transmit the public the importance of the site, and that's why the building inside is composed basically with the idea of public space. The interior of the Philharmony, in this case in Szczecin, is just a kind of public loop all around the uses of the Philharmony. Try to provoke the idea that in a square inside the building would be the perfect spot for sharing moments, sharing the activities, and sharing basically the importance of meet all together in the same place, in a cultural place, in this case, in order to listen jazz, live music that basically is for a philharmonic the heart or the soul somehow of the program. And in this case, in Szczecin, was basically the main target. How to achieve the best scenario, the best hall, the best somehow spot for the soul of this building, which is basically play live music. In this case, trying to find a contrast between interior and exterior, trying to play with the expressivity of the materiality, light, trying to play with what we like to define like the fundamentals of our profession. Basically, how to achieve the best space based on with the fundamentals. I mean, proportion, scale, and natural light. Outside, the building tries to provoke the attention of the citizens, tries to suggest, tries to seduce the citizens, and tries to provoke somehow the idea that this place is a place that is based on the essence of Szczecin, of this site, tries to recover somehow the importance of the site, and tries to express in a new way this character that we think that matches with the neighborhood, that matches with this somehow multiple layers of ages and different styles then compose somehow Szczecin nowadays. The second sample of public building. It's a building that we did in Lausanne, in Switzerland. In this case, it's a museum. And somehow it's a different case, because in sketching we had to recover somehow the importance of that. Well, we identified somehow that the main task was to recover the importance of that specific site, trying to find the right character. And it was somehow different than in Lausanne, because the references within the closer context were easier than in Lausanne. This is the heart of the city, Lausanne, just close to the train station. In this spot, we had to, somehow we had to plan a new master plan for 3 museums. Fine Arts Museum, the Photography Museum, and the Decorative Arts Museum. And in this place, basically, we needed to compose. Let's say again, compose. We needed to compose a building that could somehow be transformed in this kind of ensemble of museums. Ideally, the brief suggested to use the existing building, but somehow, in a certain moment during the development of the project, we decided that the object by itself was not enough to transform the site. The building by itself couldn't transform the site with intensity and with the needs that we considered this site had. So it was clear in a certain moment that the engine of thinking for the project was not the architecture itself by itself. It was the idea of public space. It was the idea of how to look back to the city and how to put the city and the public space as the main target in our design. That's why we decided somehow to forget about, for a moment, about the objects that we needed to compose or we needed to build. And let's try to propose a public space that could activate somehow the spot where we were working, but at the same time, that could rediscover what was the city and what is the meaning of this part of the city in Lausanne. And that's why we propose a kind of approach with very simple architectures, very simple elements that has that has the intention just to compose the best background for this new public space, a background that tries to protect, that tries to define somehow a clear limit between the train tracks, between the dust, the noise, between all the elements that can affect somehow the quality of life within the square, and then basically could suggest a new view of the city characterized by this architecture. An architecture that basically it's built having in mind the reference of the closer context, but the reference of the atmosphere and the reference of the character that this place had. This place close to the train tracks, where the old warehouses of maintenance of the trains were placed, finally appears somehow in architecture through this kind of rhythm, this kind of elements that somehow suggest or somehow reminds the same rhythms, the same elements that you can find on the train tracks or on the train station. The building basically puts all the attention about the importance of the public space, and this means that all the public uses, direct uses related with the square are the most public. And then the building tries to somehow inside, tries to provoke somehow this new background, looking for the essentials in what is a museum. And I think that this is something that we always have in mind. Try to think about the essence, reflect about the main purpose of what we are doing. In this case, a museum tried to achieve the best background for artworks, the best background for the light, best background for somehow the experience of somebody when looking at the artworks, because that was the main purpose in this case in Lausanne. And doing it not just with the references or the self-reference that we have, but having in mind that the specific, the idea that we always build in specific places where we have to rediscover the uniqueness of the places, and trying to achieve references outside, like in the big staircase that connects the temporary galleries with the permanent galleries in the museum, trying to rediscover somehow the importance of what is surrounding us. But in Lausanne, the main responsibility of the building was to rediscover this part of the city, was to understand that the building is just, let's say, it's just the engine to provoke that the public activity around the idea of culture can blow up. The temporary galleries on top of the building, I mean, just simple spaces characterized by natural light. Again, the idea of rhythm, the essence of the place, the character of the place appears inside rhythm, light, and somehow the building expressing towards the exterior, somehow the idea that this building protects and characterizes the site, trying to achieve the best public space that we could achieve in the heart of the city. The third sample, it's a completely different scale. It's in a smaller building, but somehow reflects about an idea that I think is going to be important in the Prague competition too. I mean, this building is the Tanzhaus in Zurich, just in front of the Limmat River, in this neighborhood of Zurich, where it's a neighborhood characterized not just by the housing, not just by beautiful architectures, it's almost just a landscape. It's characterized by the infrastructure, by the bridge for the train, the bath area, different scales, different, it's a landscape composed somehow in a very heterogeneous way. And within this place, in between three, let's say small buildings, I mean, an office building and a house apartments building and a kindergarten here, we had to build the new house for the dance school, basically, with a very small program. I mean, just a small theater for 150 people, 3 studios for around 20 people each one, and a program for the offices and the wardrobes for the artists. And basically, in this project, it was clear for us that, okay, we had to deal with the surroundings, we had to deal with how to connect the different levels, how to deal with the river, how to compose something that could activate, again, like in Lausanne or in Stettin, the public life, how to propose a public space, and how to do it with an architecture that shouldn't be somehow, I mean, too impositive, because that would mean perhaps to destroy the relationship between these three buildings, and how to compose something that even with such a small scale, could express the importance of the fact that this is a public building, and this is something that needs to, again, provoke culture and provoke public life. And in this case, we did it understanding the building, as I was explaining before, as a landscape. The building appears characterized by this geometry. I mean, this single geometry that defines the attitude of the building facing this case, the south side. Trying to understand that the building needs to blend, not just, needs to express not everything just with its shapes, but blending somehow the landscape and the surroundings, and filtering through the greenery that we have in front of us, trying to achieve the right scale, stepping back the building, provoking moments just to let enough space for the citizens to move around and to contemplate somehow the building, but to the architecture to establish somehow this background and this filtering through nature and architecture that allows the ensemble to work in a natural way somehow. The idea was understand that in this case, to belong to a landscape, in in this particular case means try to blend nature and architecture in a very sensitive way, let's say, using somehow this shape, the triangular shapes, as the elements that could define somehow how nature could be introduced again into the building, how this could characterize the light inside the building, how this could characterize to, as I said before, blend somehow the building with the exterior, and how the building appears as a part of the landscape, because it was not just about us. It was not just about how to materialize somehow the object. It was about understanding the character of this place, the atmosphere, means basically to incorporate the building in this idea of landscape. This is a view from the first floor. I mean, this kind of huge belvedere overlooking the river, somehow how this strong expression outside towards the river appears inside in a much softer way. I mean, how the openings are characterized by basically by the nature that appears outside, how somehow the light again appears as an engine guiding all what happens inside, and how these simple elements, this simple structure can characterize the main foyer, which is an extension of the pathway that is facing the river outside, and that is just characterized by light, movement, and somehow the idea that this simple gesture can define an architecture with enough strength to define what is a public space, a public building. Inside the theater, just characterized by these simple forms, where the light appears, as I said before, as the engine or as the guideline in all the spaces. Outside, the building appears just again as a kind of background, where the most important is not the object itself, it's this idea of landscape, composing somehow a new reality for the site, a new reality that is based on the essence of what we find always in the places where we work, and then tries to recover the uniqueness, respecting the context, but trying to take the context and step beyond. And I think that that's the main responsibility in Prague, to try to even understanding that we are going to reinvent somehow the site, try to understand the essence of this site and taking it beyond somehow the limits of these characteristics, trying to rediscover the uniqueness of this place. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. It was a beautiful lecture. I have one question. When you work on a conversion of some industrial building, like a railroad building, some old factory or something like that, there is always some community that used to work there or just exist there around the building. Do you suggest to talk to the people or being inspired by them?
Well, it's difficult to answer if it's inspired by them, but everything inspires you basically. No, I think it's the idea of community, the idea of let's say the idea of how to build something together. I mean, it's always on the base of all what you do, and I think that's somehow. I mean, it's difficult to apply it when you are designing. But it's something that you have in your mind always, know how to do that, and somehow guides you. I mean, you know that that's your responsibility, and that guides you. But it's difficult to find a direct link when you are designing, when you are drawing, when you are doing a model. It's very difficult to find that direct link. But it's important to have it in the background always, present you. You know, this idea that, well, I would say that it's important to have it always in mind.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's time for your questions. We have some questions in my chat, so we will ask them. And I also want to invite all speakers to join our Zoom. I guess we have two speakers from SANAA. It should be Lucy Stiles and Francesca Singer. I hope we hear each other. Yes, we can see each other. Welcome to camp. And I also invite Signe Kongebro and Winnie Maas that we heard before. I have a question for everybody, of course, and I hope maybe we can start with Mr. Veiga, because you are the fresh one. How should cities prepare themselves for a period after competition? Because as I mentioned, Prague has a desperate lack of modern architecture. We don't have many experience with new buildings, new iconic buildings in the middle of the city. Is there a way how to prepare for the reaction of the public? And do you have some example where when it was made perfectly?
Well, I don't know if I have enough experience to tell you how to prepare a city to the criticism and to all the discussions that you're going to have after the competition. Probably, I mean, I think that all the criticism and all the conversation that you're going to have, I think, are going to enrich somehow the final project. But I think that I just would say that in this kind of interventions, I mean, like in Prague, so important, not just in terms of dimensions, but in terms of what this building means. I think the most important is after the competition, do not have doubts that the building needs to become a reality. I mean, all the discussions, all the tensions, all the stress that probably in Prague are going to happen after the competition are going to be meaningful if finally you can't build anything. And I think that the most important is to not have any doubts and try to make real what from so many years you have been planning. And somehow just to realize that that's the most important is the main challenge for the cities when you have this kind of processes. You have to do something. You have to make real something, and that's. I think it. I'm not allowed to say that it's an advice, but what I think that is the best. Probably guideline that I'd say that it's important for a city.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone has a reaction for that? Some example from other cities that made it perfectly. No, that's okay.
This is add to you. I think there will be always no-sayers. There will be always people that complain. And that's also part of our democracy and our freedom to do that. The ways how to understand that that there is a majority, maybe that something wants but doesn't say yes, and that and so the no-sayers to balance that. So that is an art of a political art, and that is very well. That needs to be somehow accomplished and also organized to understand the enthusiasm or the hidden enthusiasm that is in any project. That is an important task for the city or for the organizers to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
I just want to comment. I think some of the projects that we have done lately, where we have a very sort of fixed design piece, and then we have a more open-ended design piece I can't comment on exactly where it is because it's a secret, but it's more like, so we have more a framework for participation with the users or the citizens or sort of the stakeholders, that we don't design everything right to the end. And that is a tendency we see when we work in complex urban settings, that the design in itself also needs some kind of representation or playboard of being more open towards programming the facility.
You're right. There come also good ideas out of criticism. Also, both of you have said that. That is, and somehow it's also very nice to show it. Also, when you think, okay, there's a kind of mark or element on the design that illustrates that nuance that is coming into the design. You call it wretchedness, but also you show the contradictions in certain cases. Also, it can be very beautiful. The scratches.
I think the whole point of doing a cultural building, I mean, we can design the hardware for you, but sort of the whole software, the whole the cultural cathedral, you can say, is made by the people for the people. So in a way, the whole sort of curating the aftermath of the standard program is very important. That is an involving process, I think. So the experiences are free to share, and the whole broadcasting on Insta, where it is also part of the experience for the people that we are not owners of as architects, but we of course accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can continue with you, because your example of opera in Copenhagen was, you showed us that the building itself showed people how to use the space, how to enjoy the place near to river. Prague has a significant problem with cars and the transportation at all. And do you think that it's possible for one building to show people a new standard, some new system, new way how to transport around the one building, that they will decide, okay, this is what we want, this is how Prague or other cities should work? Do you think that one building can be that such an impulse for that?
Great question. I think buildings of this importance needs to be an epicenter of not only culture, but also about what society is made of. And micro-mobility and smart mobility and the whole mix of sustainable transportation modes are very important to drive urbanism throughout all global cities. So for me, I think that's a brilliant idea. If mobility can become some kind of design driver, also in relationship to sort of the cultural epicenter. That would really be a statement, also taking upon a big responsibility for that sort of destination.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
To add to Signe, because I do think that already the urban plan that you have been prepared for this competition, it did already do quite a strong step by reducing the traffic of the north-south highway on this specific spot, and by also demanding for maybe a coverage of parts of the boulevard on the. So if that then already, if then this building helps already to do it. So the significance that Signe was talking about of such a program already helps you to calm down a little bit the nervosity of the Prague traffic system. So that is what I also saw in the project. That can only be strengthened, and I think the design therefore of that roads or of that plaza, of that environment, you can even enlarge that potential. I see even a kind of a possibility to make it bigger, that effect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There is a question from public. How important do you think is the idea of light and architecture intertwined together in the buildings like a philharmonic, which main focus is on sound? Do you think that light is the important inviting, something like an invitation for people into a building, or why is that important in buildings like philharmonic halls? Because we have seen it in many examples from your lectures.
I think it's quite important, because every time you attend a play, it's a unique moment. So light helps you just to realize that every time is different, and light transforms the space where you are. And I mean, the difference of, I mean, you can feel the difference inside the space depending of the season, depending of the moment. And basically that helps you to realize that the moment that you are living is unique. So that's why natural light goes somehow as a very important element every time you design a whole, or in this case, a filharmony.
Mm-hmm. Any reactions?
I mean, light, sound, tactility, they are all part of the human senses, and that is understanding of oneself, being in sort of individual, but in a community with others, being inspired and being part of a cultural destination. I think for me, that's evident that sound and light are like brother and sister, and light has the magic of change the spaces inside and outside a lot. And for me, light is nature, and dealing with that, filtering that, using that as sort of a material in a way where we can harvest the beauty is part of also the tactility of architecture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Winnie Mas, do you have any reaction?
I think there are already beautiful phrases here, but it's I think the question also has to deal with that more and more neutral black boxes are appearing in music land, and that is because in many, because with different genres that music is taking, with different collaborations within the field of music, neutrality is kind of celebrated and replaced by artificiality. So that's a tendency that's where true, and also in the brief I think see components of that, to be honest, in this case. But there's so how far does the light go? That is maybe the question. And the light, for sure, it will be like in Cygnus building. There will be in the foyers. That has a role where, you know, when you have been in a dark space and you come out, you are trying to find out where you are. So that is also kind of almost a kind of a psychological reason to have it during the breaks next to the buffet to steer yourself again into reality. So there is the question is a bit generic what came across. It's good to apply that on the specific subject of making a philharmonic, where it makes sense and where to add it, and in what way it makes sense. That is behind it. I always think also when you go into the hall or in one of the halls and you look around that everybody's coming in, because that's also part of the theatrical aspect, then I need light, and I need also somehow the hall tells me how to direct or how I see the other people that are in that hall. It becomes a storytelling, and you look into people's eyes to find out if there are friends close to you that you can pick up in the break. So there are intriguing moments where where it appears and where it disappears, and that's part of the functioning, I would say, of film. I mean, there's a big discussion during concerts also in many philharmonic halls at the moment. How much light do you add to the music? And there are conductors that demand for certain kind of light level. Yeah, it is where it tame it a bit down in certain cases. I think a new building should anyway facilitate that. That is this kind of flexibility to work with that. I don't know. It can also be kitsch. That's the moment that it exaggerates your emotion. That's the danger, a little bit that could happen. But it's but I'm aware that. That say the Philharmonic as an institution has to develop a good collaboration between these two senses of that is we have to give it a chance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and maybe the last question for each of you. Personally, what is the next big thing in architecture? Next big thing that change architecture in 10, 20, 30 years? What are you looking forward to?
Well, let me give it a start when the silence is so much there. The world at the moment is a roller coaster of there are events happening in every 2 weeks, as we all witness and do that. And how to steer then architecture is architecture. How can that somehow survive, or how can that contribute to this roller coaster? And there are different ways, different opinions. I think our group here have different contributions to this roller coaster. You can calm down in a way. You can accelerate. You can yell out. And all of them make sense. And that includes. So I do a kind of generic or political piece of it, but of course there's a huge climatic agenda. Of course, there's a huge social agenda that we have to facilitate. And with buildings, you can pieces of that, and you can in that building you can exaggerate one piece in order to make it a little bit stronger. Is what we all see in all the works of tonight. That you can do that. I love that biodiversity of these contributions that can be, and I think theoretic people like you have to make the overview of what is the kaleidoscope of the voices that are here, of the ways of contributing to all these specific agendas in order to maneuver us to this kaleidoscopic roller coaster that we are facing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Signe and Alberto.
Yeah, I can continue. I think there is something going on right now due to planetary crisis. And so it's not only the use of biogenics. I think that will happen, and in terms of decarbonization and so on. But of course, that influences a lot of architecture right now going on. But I think there's a big thing going on in understanding the context and unleashing hidden contextual potentials is very important. And that also changed the role of architecture. So we should both be able to listen to the existing citizens' culture, understanding the heritage of a specific site, because everything is brownfield or is existing. We don't have greenfield, I would claim, in the world. But on the other hand, you also need to somehow understand what is there, what is the pavement, what about the trees, what about the local weather, sort of the very local context. And I think this sensibility is new, or it hasn't been in the architecture for a very long time, where it has been more like a imperialistic way of putting pieces of art or architecture in a place and then sort of dominating it. I think there is it's a more sensible way of designing right now, and that doesn't mean it has to be humble, because I think we need art and inspiring architecture more than ever. We need to be touched, and we need to understand humanity in the bigger picture. So in a way, it's also the ability of doing these analyses very carefully, but on the other hand, be very precise in how we create architecture.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, I just would add to what Winnie and Signe said that, well, I think that as an architect, we should think that we need to do our best, not for the time where we live, but for the next ones. I mean, for the next generation. I think that we are facing so many, as Signe said, crises and so many challenges that, I mean, you can think about all what's going to happen in 10, 20 years. You don't know it. You just need to think that you need to do your best, thinking about you are just another liar at the places where you work, and you just need to do your best for the next ones. And I think that with that attitude, that helps you to discover the specificity or the uniqueness of the sites where you work, the challenges in every. It doesn't matter the size, or doesn't matter the the kind of commission you have. It's just thinking about that you need to do your best, thinking who is going to come later than me. And I think it's the attitude that all of us should have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Lucy and Francesca, the same question for you. Next big thing in architecture.
Lucy, do you want to start?
Oh, okay, go ahead. I think that probably over the next couple of decades, the architecture will show more of a behavioral shift, because it's not only the architecture itself, but it's also the way that we inhabit it, the way that we learn to live it. And that if there's all this, obviously, the urgency of the climate crisis and the sort of level of engagement that there is, maybe there's an opportunity to sort of really question the sort of steady state environment of the 20th century, to look at something that has a much softer edge, something that's kind of composed of these buffer areas or a kind of gradient of spaces that can be kind of fine-tuned, I guess, for various activities rather than considered as a sort of broad stroke whole. So I hope that will be a kind of two-way scenario. So it's not only the architects that can propose these things, but it's also people can somehow learn to live a little differently. And that maybe the sort of solution to some of the questions of our day can be resolved through that dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
From my point of view, I think that it would be really important if there was a stronger sense of responsibility that architects had when they started designing, because what is happening is that actually new architecture that is being built is not really sensitive to its context and to the life of the people who will inhabit it. And it's very, very common. And it's actually the most common approach to architecture most of the times in a generic way. And of course, it's not the case for the people who have been invited to this competition. And this is why maybe this project will be successful, because somebody who will build it will have this sense of responsibility. And it's very important to have it, especially in this context, where the infrastructures around the site are so complex and so different, and the kind of life that there is all around the site is very different, but it has all to come together in that center. And I think, yeah, this is how this project will be successful, probably, and this is how I hope for the future architects will think.
Okay, once again, thank you very much for your decision to join our evening. We were really happy to have you here in our Urban Talk session, and I hope that we will meet once in Prague in person. Thank you very much.
Actually, I want to say we were participating because Sejima Nishizawa just wanted to say hi and be represented, although, of course, it's the middle of the night in Japan, they couldn't. So they really asked us to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Very good.
Yes.
Next time.
Great. You have been watching Urban Talks. You have been watching third evening focused on Vltava Philharmonic Hall competition, and you will find this evening and 2 evenings before on the urbantalks.camp. You will find upcoming talks there, and you will find our archive with every talk we had here in camp in last 4 years, full of international architecture. So find it, join it, follow us on YouTube, and I hope we will meet again, maybe with the topic of Vltava Philharmonic Hall or other interesting architecture from all around the world. So good evening, and see you later.